This is the A to Z podcast in cold, miserable cold Ohio. I'm Zach Jackson. In Arizona, he's Andre Knott. Good morning, honey.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you? It's a nice, balmy 75 and sunny here in beautiful Arizona. Goodyear, Arizona. I've got sunglasses on, and I'm going to sit outside so you guys can hear the planes buzz by and the birds chirp just because I'm that type of jerk.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I got home from Indy. I beat the storm out of there. I do have a couple decently funny combine stories. Should I roll them now or save them for later?
Let's piece them through there one by one. I mean, if you want to. I was going to pepper you with a little bit of what exactly Indianapolis
Well, these are non-football
like
stories,
weekend.
so yeah. All right. Well,
yeah.
All right. So last year, they have this the sports journalism conference every year around this time at Ohio University, my alma mater. I think I talked about it last year. And it was really cool. When I went last year, I thought for a kid that totally would have geeked out for Peter King to come to my school when I was in college, and I did, to be invited there when he was there, and probably 15 or 16, honestly. Other of my peers, some I knew, some I didn't. To basically have them pay me to go back to OU, which I would do on my own dime at any time. Have an excuse to be the creepy old guy walking around. It was awesome. And I, met some nice kids, hopefully, gave them some wisdom, and it was just a really cool experience. So I'm at the Combine, and I run into a peer of mine. And he's not from Cleveland, and he probably doesn't know about this podcast, so I'm not going to say his name only for that reason, not that I'm trying to hide. But I go to the bar one night at the Combine, and I look at him, and he's like, dude, I should have texted you or called you. He goes, it was like the first or I forget if he said first or second night at the thing. He had just been there back at OU. I think it's called the Moran Symposium. We call it the thing. Sorry. He goes, so we get over that initial awkwardness of everybody's starting to get a buzz on, and the kids are loosening up, and the formal stuff is over. He goes, so I'm walking to our second or third bar, and these two kids come up to me, and they say, hey, can we ask you a question? He's like, sure, that's what I'm here for. And they go, do you know Zach Jackson? And the guy goes, well, I just kind of stop in my tracks because I have no idea what's coming next. Like, I knew you weren't there. And you're like, yeah, I do. Right. Like, well, he was here last year, and when we went in the junction, he bought 20 punches for the whole group, and he said, it's about time we get to drinking, and he said, everybody right now, let's just do these. And he goes, man, I've never been prouder of you. And I said, well, I had no idea that I did that, but I'm glad I left my lasting impression on the Moran Symposium.
The best part is you really don't remember doing that.
No,
That's
I really
the best
don't.
Part.
But I do remember bitching at a couple of my cohorts, like, guys, get off your wallets. That's why we're here. And if I bought 20 of them, they were probably $5 a piece. So it was just time, to share the wealth. So,
isn't it great though to go into those times? We can say this at this age, and I can say this because I went on to my buddy Joe Burton's podcast, and it just dropped like today too. And I'm reading his tag on his tag, what he put up. He says, my old friend Dre Knott came on our podcast as a sports and our majestic transition into adulthood while still maintaining our sexual appeal for the masses. I laugh at that part because obviously it's a joke, but we sat around and had that same talk. It's amazing that you get older and the things that make you happy is going back to your college. You go back to your old college stomping grounds and buying something that you had to put on a credit card that you didn't know if it was going to go through 20 years ago. Now you know it goes through, and you still do the stupid stuff.
Yeah. So I was glad to help. So then the other thing, I was leaving the Combine this weekend, and as I talked about last week, I had the power outage in my house, so I had to just basically had 5 minutes to get my stuff and throw it in the car, and I brought the podcast equipment and all of this stuff. So as I'm leaving, not only am I hungover as shit, I got a certain window to get checked out and get my life together, then get my car parked somewhere else, then get back to the interviews by a certain time. So I had this big ass equipment, not equipment thing. I'm thinking football terms, but luggage rack, right? And it's got the podcast mixer, it's got my bag, it's got some clothes still hanging. It's got my backpack with my computers, and I'm kind of navigating it down the hallway as I'm not sure I'm seeing straight quite yet at 10 in the morning, right? And so I come crashing down, and somebody gets off the elevator, and it starts to close. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll just wait. Well, all of a sudden, another guy, pops out, and he wasn't getting off the elevator. And he's like, oh, man, I'll help you. So he keeps it open, and he reaches out and kind of guides it in. And it's not a big elevator, so for two people in this thing, we're pretty stuck in there. So he looks down and sees my backpack, and the one I usually take, especially when I have two computers, is from the national championship game in 2014 when Ohio State was playing, and it has the logo on there. So he looks down at it, and he goes, "Oh, hey, man, congratulations on winning the national championship." And I start laughing. I go, "Well, I appreciate that." I go, "But I've never really won much of anything in my life, especially in sports." And he's like, "Well, what do you do? Are you a coach or something?" I said, "No, I'm a writer," and blah, blah, blah. So we get to talking, and, we go down the 5 or 6 floors. We get there, and he's all super nice again, and, guides with one hand, guides the luggage rack into a straight line and holds the door open with the other. And he goes, "All right, man, well, nice talking to you." I said, "You too." He goes, "Listen, I'm here at the Combine." He goes, "I'm just a football fan, just trying to go see the Combine." I said, "That's cool." He goes, "But this year I'm thinking about moving to Pittsburgh. I think I want to try out for the Steelers." And I look at him, and he was dead serious.
Oh, my God.
And I thought, man, I know I had a lot of vodka last night, but I must have missed out on the really good drugs. So I finagled the luggage rack back out to the old Corolla, threw everything in the car, pulled up next to Jerry Jones' bus at a red light, and had a chuckle about that. Went in the parking garage and got about my day. So those are my 2 quick Combine stories, non-football, that gave me a chuckle.
Speaking of the Corolla, God bless you for driving that thing. And you could probably put about 8 of them into the Jerry Jones bus, because when I first got here, how can I tell the story and not piss everybody off that I'm going to piss off? Basically, my rental car is through radio. When I come back out here for a long time, like it goes back and forth who pays for certain travel and who pays for it. It doesn't matter. Everybody doesn't need to know all that. So I didn't really place I didn't put down, I didn't know what I was going to get. I ended up getting it way later than I thought I was going to get. And it was dark, and it was raining, and it was cold, and I just wanted to get to the house that I'm staying at Friday night when I got here. So I was just like, give me whatever you got. And, I literally was at that point, and with spring training, spring breaks, just everything that's going on around here, it can just be hectic. And I know that already. It can be hectic at times getting a rental car. So the guy asked me, he's like, "Hey, man, you cool with just getting this Corolla?" And I was like, yeah. I didn't care. I was just like, whatever. I got in it, man, and I felt like I was going 10 miles an hour the whole time, and I was going to get squashed by bugs. So I'm out of that car, but I thought of it as I gave it back, because I had to get a Malibu, because I'm a Chevy guy, and it at least makes me feel like I'm not on the bottom. How you drive that thing everywhere you drive it, God bless your heart, son. Maybe I guess because I drive SUVs all the time at home, and I'm just used to being. I used to drive cars that were smaller like that before I got kids and grew up, I guess. But I don't know how you do it and how you go back and forth. I know how you do it. You put a ton of miles on it, and it's cheap on gas and all that other stuff. But that's Jesus,
it was $18 to fill. I was like on perfectly empty when I pulled out of the hotel lot. There was a Speedway right across the street, and it was like $18 to fill it up.
That's it.
Yes.
That's like half a tank on our Tahoe. That's like even guys like $50 to charge to fill up my Tahoe. So I get why you do it. Like I said, it's just crazy that once you drive something for a certain amount of time, how weird it is to be in a smaller, lower to the ground car. And that was a weird transition for me. I literally got in the car, and it was like middle of the night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I've driven to this house, and I've driven back to Goodyear from the airport probably about 40 times. I can do it in my sleep. But it was like the scariest drive ever, because I'm on the 10, and it's like I see people just flying by me, whizzing by every 2 seconds. I'm like, man, I'm gonna die in this whole thing. How the hell does Zach do this shit? I'm like, I can't do it. It's funny. You have your Indianapolis stories, and I got my Arizona stories. So last year they started this thing called Innings Fest out here in Arizona, and they had it towards the end of spring training, and they have it out in Tempe, which is right by the campus of Arizona State. And obviously, anytime I come close to Arizona State and that campus, I think of us being out here in 2007 when we both traveled here with the Browns. And it was the night of an Arizona State football game. And we somehow ended up on Mill Street, and then everything goes black. And then the next thing I remember is Kellen Winslow catching the ball out of bounds at the end of the game against the Cardinals, telling me and yelling at Romeo Cornell, "That's why I'm the fucking Michael Jordan of this team. The rest of y'all motherfuckers can suck my dick." That's just what he said. Don't come at me. And then an infamous fight happening on the plane. I can't tell you what happened 3 hours from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock Pacific time. I don't remember that part, really. That's all I remember from that game. So as we're on the way to this Innings Fest, which is a cool outdoor music festival, no one really that I would ever listen to, and you're gonna make jokes at me for the rest of the podcast after I tell you this. The one person I can remember that I did see Saturday night was Sheryl Crow. And I remember, and they have two different stages. Anytime anybody that's been to a big music festival, you know what it's like. Yeah, too, but because the job I have, we were able to get some pretty cool passes, get backstage, kind of walk around, have free booze, all that other stuff. And somehow or another, I ended up on Mill Street again, and don't really remember much after that again. So whether it's 2019, whether it's 2007, Mill Street does me the same way, no matter what. I guess. Yeah,
I believe it. I believe it all the way. That's for sure. As we transition to sports here, I want to start with kind of a bigger picture because we've been talking. I think the last few podcasts, the Anthony Davis stuff with some NCAA Zion stuff. We've kind of talked bigger picture things on the business of sports, right, and how it's changed. So before we dive into any specific Browns or NFL issues, and I have a feeling we're going to end up talking about that wacko Antonio Brown again, in addition to his buddy LeBron.
Ooh.
What are your thoughts on the franchise tag as a concept?
That's a good question. I think it circumvents the whole issue of free agency. I think that is something that should be earned in everyone's career and everyone's job. I'm not going to place NFL players that are making the amount of money that they are into what you and I or everybody else goes through financially in their jobs. But I do think that in a way it's taken away from free agency a little bit. I do think that there should be a way, and I get it, and I think all the leagues in one way are trying to do the best that if you draft correctly, cultivate a player correctly, you give yourself a fair chance to keep said player that you've put all this time and money into, right? I think that's the basis of it. Just like when in the NBA, you have all the Larry Bird rights rules and everything else, and a guy can get more money if he stays with said team that drafts him. I think in baseball, they're going to go through it with arbitration years that basically a team can hold a kid. You can hold a guy for 6 to 7 seasons if you do it right. You can get 7 big league seasons out of a guy before he can become a free agent. So I guess what I'm saying is when I go through that, all these leagues have great lawyers that are smarter than your lawyer or smarter than any lawyer that we've ever met, and they've found ways to prolong and keep guys on the team. Now, in saying that, you are getting, top 5%?
Yes.
When
the average of the top 5 at your position. Yes.
Which I can't feel bad for a guy that's getting that because 9 times out of 10, let's be honest, you most likely aren't top 5 in your position if you get to that point. Every once in a while. Jadeveon Clowney, who I believe was tagged last night, now he deserved to be that top 5 percentage, right? Lawrence with the Cowboys, I don't know if he deserves top 5. I think he deserves a lot of money. I won't say he doesn't deserve it, but does he deserve top 5? But I get it. Wouldn't you rather pay a guy $17 million for 1 year and go for it in that 1 year than give him $90 to $80 million with 50 of it guaranteed? I still think it works towards the ownership more than it works towards the player, even though the player is still winning, big time over that 1 year of the contract.
Well, right. I understand the detractors to it, but I think, Dre, and I understand in the new CBA, the players push for more guaranteed money because the nature of football, they're saying you guys are making millions and billions, and we aren't guaranteed the next play, the guys that are doing it, and I get that. However, in this system, I think it works because it gives it protects the teams, and it does give the players an amount of money that they are going to make it, right? That's why you use it, but it's giving them it's that putting it out there. And when you say Lawrence, you're not sure if he's worth it. Well, he's not going to be top 5%. He's going to be the top 1 because this is his second tag. It even goes up and pays them more the second time around, right? It's supposed to discourage teams. So it tells you how much they value him. Now, part of that is this, just how important, how premium the pass rush position has come. As you look at the Browns in the draft and you see, how these guys are getting the tag. This is Monday evening-ish as we're recording. The deadline is Tuesday at 4. Today, Grady Jarrett, Frank Clark. I think D Ford was already out there, but they made it official. Jadeveon Clowney, no surprise, made official. DeMarcus Lawrence made official. I mean, these guys aren't going to get out there. So I understand they want the guarantee and they want that 3-year contract. But in a world where rarely is anything past the second year actually guaranteed, and you're getting this money and you're opening the team to negotiations, and the team is telling you that they value you by not wanting to lose you in the first place, which was kind of my point of bringing this up as we bridge to what free agency really is and how smart teams use it. I think, I don't think there's anything perfect in this system, but I think it's a pretty darn good process that works out for most guys. I don't have a problem with it at all.
I know. When you say it that way, you're right. No, it's not killing the goose. I mean, like you said in the Cowboys situation, to them this is better than doing a long-term deal, right? With DeMarcus Lewis, I think so. Because at the end of the day, and as a guy that watches a lot of Cowboys games, has he matured into a really good pass rusher? Yes. Do I see him as a guy that's worth what he's probably going to get paid? No. But that's how the league works, and they've been able to build a great defense around him. And to be completely honest, if they can get the year they want out of him in 2019 and keep developing the guys that they've drafted and put around them, they'll hopefully be able to develop another. And I think the other thing that goes along with that for the Cowboys, I'm just using the Cowboys situation, you look at the other guy, the kid from Nebraska that they drafted that they would hope would be bookends with him, and he's been a complete mess. Mm-hmm. He's basically been the Josh Gordon of the Dallas Cowboys. And I think that's more reason why DeMarcus Lawrence is probably high-fiving him right now saying, thanks, bro. You just sent me back to the
exactly.
Now, everybody,
right.
you know, like, he's probably going, thanks a lot, man. You just made my whole career money-wise. The Atlanta guy, the big defensive tackle, I just find it funny, and maybe it's just this year, all those names you said that are getting tagged, all either defensive ends or run stoppers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't hear any receivers. I don't hear any offensive linemen. And maybe it's just that type of year. Maybe it's just that type of year.
A kicker got it.
It tells you
a kicker got it, and another one might ahead of the deadline. But you're right.
That was goofy.
You are exactly right. You are exactly right in that it's all defensive linemen, defensive ends, or linebackers who are basically edge rushers. It's not an off-the-ball linebacker. You know, it's not a running back. It's and we've seen them used at different times. I mean, obviously, Le'Veon Bell got here in a goofy way. But, you know, it's young pass rushers specifically that are getting it, which tells you a lot about the value of the position and how hard it is to find these guys.
Yeah, and they're also the craziest SOBs on the field. I'm just being honest. That like to play that position, you got to be a little off, right? I think like defensive ends to me have a little bit of wide receiver in them, not diva-ish, but they are kind of the stars. They live in a different planet, the great ones, and that goes all the way back to Lawrence Taylor. Al Bubba Baker has told me some of the craziest stories when he was a nutso playing defensive end for the Detroit Lions. It just seems like the guys. I'll even go back to my favorite guy growing up. Would be I can't think of his name right now, and I want to. The dude used to slap people on the side of the head, play for the Rams, people eaters. Gosh,
Deacon Jones.
I'll think of it before it's gone.
Deacon
Jones.
He was so your favorite that you don't even remember his fucking name.
Well, I never saw him play down, motherfucker. I wasn't old enough to, but I saw all the stuff on NFL. You know what? You want to hear? I can tell a quick story why I couldn't remember it. Because Aaron Shea told a great story at the Doug Deacon roast, where he said when he met Doug Deacon, he was so out of it. This is so Aaron Shea, and Aaron Shea will be on this podcast this year and ruin all of our jokes because he is the sloppiest, funniest motherfucker ever. But he basically said so when he met Doug Deacon, and everybody told him, hey, Doug Deacon's from the same town as you. He thought Doug Deacon was the other Deacon. He was like, wait, I thought this dude was black. This guy ain't the Deacon Jones everybody told me about.
That is such an Aaron Shea story. Oh, my God.
Swear to God. So Doug Deacon's going to Shea, and he's like, yeah, you're from this part of Illinois. Yeah, doesn't your dad own a laundromat? Or, you know, and Shay's looking at him going, uh-huh. And the whole time Shay's like, it's not clicking. He's like, why is Deacon Jones white? I could have swore he was black the whole time. That is a true story, and that's why I got caught up in
it. Oh, no, I have to gather myself.
Okay. No, this is a good conversation, though. I'm glad that you brought this up because I don't think most people do truly understand.
Listen, if one of these guys comes free, right, obviously the Browns are in the pass rush business. I think what some other people have forgotten in the excitement about the Browns, and it's legit, it's real, is that, you know, other teams have money to spend too. Other teams have needs too, and anybody that comes, they're going to be there. And you always have to ask yourself, in football free agency specifically, this marks the 6th straight year that the cap has gone up by at least 10%. So the NFL is sharing the wealth in that regard. You know, teams.
But I thought the NFL was dying.
Teams keep their guys. Teams keep their guys that they really want. So it's always buyer beware when a guy hits the market. And we know that, you know, some more than others, some injuries more than others, but the nature of football is that any play, as cliche as it is, can be anybody's last. So anytime you give a guarantee of any size, specifically that guarantee starts creeping 20 million, 40 million above, which some of these guys would or will get, right? I mean, I think the Texans Clowney was hurt his first 2 years. He's been healthy since then. I mean, I think it's in their best interest to give him $50 million guaranteed, right? And then, as that pertains to the Browns, Myles Garrett's 23. I think we'd all like to see more from Myles Garrett, and I think we might. He has all the ability in the world. He looks like he was sculpted by Deacon Jones himself, Deacon Jones and God, right? Creating the perfect pass rusher. And after this year, that's when, under this current CBA, that's when rookies can renegotiate their deals. So technically the Browns have him under control for 2 more years. Myles has those escalators. He doesn't have to do a deal. But really, 1 year from now, the Browns and Myles Garrett could do that mega $60 to $80 million guaranteed deal. The fact that a new CBA is coming could tell Myles and his people to wait, see how much it really goes up, what they can do more with guarantees. Or sometimes, Dre, it's hard to say. Even though maybe I could get 85 guaranteed later, I'd be stupid as a football player to walk away from, say, 55, 65, right? Because if he does stay healthy and he does dominate, and he does become a top 3 pass rusher, which I don't think he's there yet, then there'll be a contract even beyond this one, because we've proven that. I think football has changed a lot over the last decade, and specifically over the last 7 or 8 years in regards to who gets paid. But I don't think pass rushers are all of a sudden going to be devalued in the coming years.
No, not at all. They're going to still get paid. I think that's a good question, though. If you are a guy like Myles Garrett, do you sit on it and wait, or do you take it as soon as you can get it put in front of you? There's a lot of different ways to look at it. I mean, look at his rookie season. I mean, you look at the difference of what he did his rookie season in his second year. It was obvious he was banged up and hurt that first year, and he was banged up his last year at Texas A&M. He's got a chance to be pretty special, and I think, like you said, a lot of it was what he was blessed with the day he was born. But his work ethic and everything else has led him to this. But I think the other thing that as you go off this and talk about this, I know Terry Pluto wrote about it a little bit on Sunday. The last time we saw the Browns have a season close to what they had this past season was obviously 2007. And I know some of us are sick of hearing about it, but it's obviously the year that you compare to this past season. Even though they won 10 games in 07, they only won 7 in 18. And, the time to go for it. And remember we talked about the window, being open or opening of the window for the Cleveland Browns, even though I don't like using that theory very often. I think it fits with this team. I think this is one of those years where, after everything you just said about free agency, the thing that steps out to me is, why don't you trust in John Dorsey and continue building to the draft? Because it's a lot easier to draft your own guy, build your own guy, then go pay for somebody else's guy. And very often you're not going to be able to pay for the best guy. You got to pay for the third-tiered guy. I remember reading when a couple of the defensive ends went on, when they got brought back in, how they were saying, well, this guy's going to get way more money. And that's what happens every time, right? The guy 4th or 5th in free agency suddenly becomes the number 1 free agent because the money's there. You pay him, and you do what you have to do. I don't blame teams. I think for Browns fans, I'm just saying I would temper my hope of some mega deal for somebody else's star. Now, the one thing that I would obviously look into is I've read, and I'm pretty sure it's true, that the Chiefs are releasing Justin Houston. Is Justin Houston the same player he was 3-4 years ago? Yeah, but when he's healthy, he does bring it. And at this point in time, you don't need a 3-down defensive end. If you can get Justin Houston that can play third downs and passing downs for you in the fourth quarter, and pair him up with Myles Garrett, that might be a tempting fate to have, considering the guy that drafted him is here in Cleveland now.
No doubt. The thing is, with Houston, they did not cut him. They're probably going to ultimately have to, because when teams know a guy is going to get cut, why would you trade anything for him, right? I guess maybe you could work out a minor deal, but when he gets cut, you get him at a more desirable contract. He will have a market.
Right.
But he's a 3-4 outside linebacker who's 30.
Yep.
And if he was still the player that he was, the Chiefs wouldn't be looking to move on from him, Dee Ford is obviously good enough to get their franchise tag, and a team that plans on scoring a lot of points and winning the way they do, he can fly off the edge, but they are changing defensive schemes, and I think they're shopping him for perceived value. See what they can get. It is hard to find these guys, Dre. I think Dorsey talked last week about different ways to create pass rush, knowing that Myles, as he continues to develop, and I'm not down on Myles at all. I think Myles basically had a lost rookie season because of the injuries.
Yeah.
Kind of limped and protected himself through his last year of college. So he's new at this, right? Like he just went through a full season for the first time. He just got double teamed really consistently for the first time. Now it's a new coach and whatever. His responsibilities are going to be almost the same, as in go get the quarterback, but as in how he's going to have to do it and how he's going to get about it, get moved around, the way he's going to get coached on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I think the sky's the limit for him. A lot has to go right. A ton has to go right to have a 20-sack season or a 17-sack season. But I think you could see a more dominant Myles Garrett in the years to come and still only have 14-ish sacks. I think that's certainly one thing that's possible. And you're right, it just becomes a business decision for Myles and his people as do we sign this a year from now. When Dorsey starts talking about being prudent, I mean, that's what it is. Like, yes, if Trey Flowers is available, right? The Colts, the Browns, a bunch of teams are going to line up to do it. But why did New England make him available? You have to ask yourself that. And my whole thing with free agency is sometimes you have glaring needs, and the Browns need off-ball linebackers, right? They're going to have to overpay. But you're always overpaying. And to me, just when you see these guys that do get out of the building, you always have to wonder. And I just would rather, Chris Smith from last year is the example that I use. I would rather deal on that third tier and pay 2.5 and 2-tier prices and get guys that still maybe for whatever reason, we're hidden behind a starter there. We're replaced by a draft pick before the team was ready. Prey on dumbass teams like the Bengals. Get those guys who are good players and make them your. I mean, Chris Smith is 26 years old? It's just like you drafted him.
A player.
Right.
That's true.
I just think that. So I understand people heard Dorsey say we're not ready to go for it yet, and they didn't necessarily disagree. I think they've heard for months now Dorsey say we're going to be prudent, we're not going to spend wildly, and they don't necessarily agree. But I do agree. It's the way I see it going. And the part of the reason you keep your money back is not just for Baker and Myles becoming what you think and hope they can be and getting these mega contracts, but it's for when the other teams that overspend fuck up and that next big trade is there, you have the cap room to make it. Really big trade.
That's the absolute, because you're going to take care of the two names you said, but you're right. You just hope one falls through the cracks at the right time and you're prepared and ready. And to be prepared and ready, that means sometimes you got to be prudent a year ahead or 2 years before that happens. And I think they're well on the way to doing that. I do. And in saying all of that, it's funny how the NFL calendar works so well. Terry Francona is great at saying spring training. He goes, he says this every year, and maybe I've been doing this job too long because some of his quotes crack me up before he even finishes saying them because I know what he's going to say. But he always kind of says the speed of spring training, whoever put spring training together and figured it out was a genius because it works. It just works. How long it takes pitchers to get ready, how long it takes guys to get ready. And same thing with the NFL calendar today. Whoever put the calendar together to have free agency start this week, have the combine last week, that runs right into the draft, OTAs. It is remarkable how they found a way to be the hot stove of hot stoves. They beat baseball at it. Nobody's going to beat the NBA at it because Twitter and pettiness was made for the NBA, and that's a whole other part of the podcast. But, it's funny you watch all these new guys, get ready for the league. And I will say this, shout out to the Akron, that Akron speed that you guys got to see in Indianapolis. And I'm happy for all the fast guys that Ohio State had and all that other stuff. But can we temper our reaction to this? Like, I watched that secondary for Ohio State, and I don't care how fast half these guys are running 40. I don't care how fast one receiver. I'm a big factor for fans, so I'm not going to kill them. But for all that speed they had, and for what Ohio State has done better than anybody else to me, and why Urban Meyer deserves a pat on the back, and Mickey, what's his name, Mickey the crazy man that works them all out.
Yep.
Marotti, you know what he's done? They know how to win the combine, and God bless them. They do the right workouts, and they get their kids prepared better than anybody else in the country. Just look at what Ohio State players have done at the combine and I'm not beating up Ohio State for it. I think this is awesome. I read a story about Mike Mamula, who dominated. He went to Boston College. For the younger kids that don't know him, I believe The Athletic had a story that I read about how he killed the combine like 14 years ago or 12 years or however long ago it was. And he goes, I didn't do anything crazy. All the things that you did at the combine is what we worked on at Boston College because someone had come from the pro level to teach them. And as I thought and watched the combine this weekend, I chuckled to myself and I was like, Ohio State has it figured out. It's like, not only are we going to win football games, but we're going to get our athletes to look the best on that combine weekend because they obviously have the workouts. Now, you can't manufacture a 4.340 or a 4.440, but you damn well can show these kids how to prepare for it and be ready. And I know these kids go to different places once the season's over. Some go to Arizona, some go to L.A. But obviously, when you look at all these kids from Ohio State running 4.440s, you won a lot of football games, but is that why they were that good?
Well, right. No. Now it's part of it, right? Because we never saw once Paris got that corner, nobody ever caught him. But you're right. That's not why they're that good. Correct. And they are recruiting.
Who's the corner? Yeah, who's Sheffield? I mean, I never watched a game where Sheffield played and it was like, oh my God, his speed's changing this defense.
No.
Like, you know, he got burned half the time when I saw him.
No, you're right. But however, in the draft, I mean, that's what you do. And I think you make a great example there of how it benefits colleges to get guys ready for this, because you're always selling your program. And especially in today's day and age where it's become such an infomercial, ABC aired the combine. Next year, they're talking about changing the schedule to make it in prime time, Dre. You know,
are you serious? Wow.
Right. Like, this is what, and when those guys are doing that, you know, every Ohio State coach is texting every recruit and say, hey, Paris is about to run again. Did you see that? Did you see how our guys lit it up again? And that's just how it works. So this leads me to my big question here. As we talked about just kind of the basis of free agency and what guys are worth, and whether you believe in prudent, and whether you believe that guys that do hit the market are always damaged goods. In baseball and basketball, it is different. But you're around a professional sports team every day, so you know how this goes. I mean, I just want to say this before we get to you asking me questions, because I think this is the big question on a lot of people's minds. Okay, it does jump off the page as wow to think that Breshad Perriman would get 16 or 20 guaranteed off 4 games.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But my question to that is, don't the Browns have to have Breshad Perriman?
That's a good question. I hate getting caught up in people's money. I don't like getting caught up in contracts, because whatever their agent can get for them, they deserve. But it's easy to go off of what we saw over the last month of the season and get excited about it. But doesn't the track record of Breshad Perriman scare you a little bit, giving him anything guaranteed? I know he was banged up as a rookie in Baltimore. I get that injuries played a big part in his inconsistencies, but that's still a part of his resume, is it not?
It is. However, you know, he played really the bulk of them were his first 2 years, and there's been 2 more years since then. And he was considered, I think, damaged goods. 6 teams minimum worked him out. Nobody signed him. The Browns called him only because an undrafted rookie got hurt. He came in. He was lost like everybody else in the building was for those 2 or 3 weeks before he was out. And then all of a sudden, the guy's making plays. And I think, Dre, if this was where the Browns were a year ago, you'd be extra scared for less money. And now it's more money, I know. But now you're like, we have to score touchdowns. And this guy showed us that he can do that.
And he can take the lid off, and it plays right back into what we just said about the draft. You can probably find the next Breshad Perriman in the draft. It may be Paris. See, these are conversations that we don't know. Like the DK Metcalf thing kind of scares me, because I watched a little bit of him in college, and he wasn't even the best receiver on his team.
Right.
And he wasn't. Like to me, like when I'm like, okay, he's a fabulous athlete, built like a tank. We don't know, or if Mary Kay made a story up about how they don't know whose family it was. I was like, how does that get printed? And I'm sorry, I would say that to her. I like the whole story. She calls Eric Metcalf. He says he's not related. The kid says he is related. And I'm like, so that means we shouldn't write it until we know if he is related or if he isn't. Not just go on both sides.
Well, hold on.
That's nor here nor there.
I didn't read that specific story, but I've kind of followed this saga, because I do remember hearing like maybe a broadcast of an old Miss game say Metcalf and doing the math. And then I understand that Eric Metcalf apparently did an interview here in Cleveland and said he's never heard of the guy. Well, listen, Terrence Metcalf is DK's father. So is Terrence Eric's brother or not? Because you're either fucking related to somebody or you're not.
That's my point. He's not. Terrence claims his dad and Eric Metcalf's dad may be cousins, is the claim, but they don't even know. Like they
don't have the same dad. They might be cousins.
No.
Okay.
They might be. I mean, and everybody black is cousins. Hell, your last name Jackson. I've been saying you related to black people for 20 years. And I wouldn't have put a story in a Plain Dealer about that. I say you're related to everybody. You're a Jackson. You like chicken. Last name Jackson. He boys with everybody. He related. That's kind of how the story went, Zach. And I'm like, nor here nor there. We went by it. I'm just saying, like the DK Metcalf thing, I know it was fun to watch this weekend, and I know in that picture that's gone around where they took my head off the picture and showed his body and showed my body, put his head on it. That's all great. But can he run a route and catch a football? Can he be consistent? He missed most of last season with a neck injury, I believe. AJ Brown, I think it's AJ Brown was the better receiver on their team. It's just, I get how we fall in love with these guys, And just remember, Brashard Perriman about 5-6 years ago was a guy we fell in love with at the same time because of his 40 drill and because of his family and all that other stuff. And it didn't show up till 6 years later.
No,
just remember.
I agree. Those are decisions you have to make. I just think you look at it. The reason in football is different than the other sports, but you've been around the Indians for enough trade deadlines and enough budget-related off seasons, right? When this stuff's coming up, you know, it wears on guys, and you know damn well, just like the guys in the front office and the guy in the manager's office knows. You know damn well which guys show up on contract years and which guys don't. Which guys show up all the time. However, when you have an established team, which the Browns are starting to have and haven't had there, you also know whether you're in your role, the trainer's room, the upstairs, or the manager's office. You also know which guys you got to have, and then they become priceless in a way, right?
Yep.
So I'm not saying that's Brashard Perriman. I mean, and to sit outside, there's not a lot of evidence because there's 6 games worth of evidence or 4 games worth of evidence or whatever. And if you look at his previous in the NFL resume, it's not good. I'm just saying when you are actually have an organization that keeps the same coach, GM, and quarterback, that keeps the same people picking the players and getting to know who's in the locker room, you know who you really need, and that's the gist of NFL free agency being so scary to start with.
That's a great point. You just hit the nail on the head. They know better than we know because they know who showed up on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. I'm only basing it off of what I saw on Sundays. I'm basing it off of what I know Baltimore expected of him and what came out of Baltimore games. If he showed up, now did he show up that way? So you just made the point of points. Did he show up that way because he was on his last life of his 9 lives, the NFL lifehood, or did he show up because that's truly who he is? That's the decision they have to make. The ability's always been there. Why did it take this long for it to happen? And I get injuries, and you're right. I can go around our facility right now, and I won't say names, but there are certain people that are here that know that'll say out loud they don't plan on being here next year, or they know they won't be here next year, but they're ready to have a career year this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's people you can go around. Yeah, and by the same token, there's people you go around and could say, hey, this guy might be the 7 hitter, this guy might be the 6th reliever, but we need this fucker. Whereas at the same time, they're saying, well, this guy, he might hit second or he might do this, but we can't wait to get rid of him.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I've been around sports a little bit. I know how this works.
You have. And it is exactly how it works. I mean, everybody don't like everybody. Put it that way. And it is a business, right? And in business, you use the commodities the best you can to make your business profitable and to win. And MLB, NFL, NBA, being profitable goes a lot of different ways. And sometimes it's just putting the ball in the bucket. I mean, this is the perfect way to go into the LA Lakers. What did they put together? Why did they like you and I have said this before, when they were signing these old, and you said this on the last podcast, what has happened to their season isn't as much of a surprise if you watch Rondo play the last 5 years. Like, is that a surprise if you watched the dude that blows Stevenson for his whole career? This shouldn't be a surprise what we're seeing from the LA Lakers. But I will say LeBron is, and this is the question I would ask you. If LeBron stays in Cleveland, and it looks like that was a foregone conclusion as soon as they won the championship, and I think you and I and the people that are around us, we all kind of had that feeling. When you won the championship, it was a pretty good feeling of, hey, this is the pinnacle. He did what he said he was going to do. He has the right to go wherever he wants. Do you think he could treat it differently and have a different type of respect if he had the same season in Cleveland this year? I'm just asking you. How do you think
I think it would be treated.
Yes,
I think it would be treated differently because I think he had earned a certain thing here, certain level of things here.
Okay,
and I think
I agree.
I mean, he's lived under. Listen, we're going on almost 20 years of him living under an intense spotlight, right?
No doubt.
Which to me is why, and it's real. I understand that, but it's also why it rings hollow on the 40th time he has to remind us every time how he doesn't have anything to prove and all of that stuff because he's used to that. He didn't just show up, right? But he chose to leave. He chose to take this streak of 8 straight finals, which I've said time and again I would put up against any sports accomplishment by anyone ever in any level, any sport. He chose to be able to be willing to piss that away for whatever reasons. He had his reasons, his family reasons, his personal reasons, his hanging out with rappers reasons, whatever it was. He's earned that right. That's what free agency is. That's what comes with being the most powerful active athlete that's ever lived. But yeah, he chose this, Dre, and that's why so many people are having chuckles at his expense.
Yeah, They really are. No, you're right. He's earned it. But you just said something, and I admitted this on the podcast I was on with my buddy Joe last week. LeBron is one of the most difficult athletes for me to have discussions like this with most people. I have them with you, and I have them on this podcast because we can talk like two human beings, and I think we both have an understanding of what we've watched. There always will be a respect for what LeBron has accomplished and what he's done from this corner, just because we know where he's come from and what he's overcome, and he is one of the greatest of all time. But all the other acts that come along with it, we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we wouldn't sit here and be honest about it and say they're ridiculous. And no other athlete could go out and try to be an A&R of a rap album. That is pretty good. I'll give him that. I watched the Maryland-Michigan basketball game yesterday, and every promo was about some other TV show he's executive producing. He has the worst barbershop show of all time that's ruining. It's a great idea, but I don't think it's great for like the uninterrupted stuff is awesome. I think this barbershop thing, if you ask me, and I'm answering myself, I think it just takes things a little too far. It unveils a little too much. I just had this conversation with Trevor Bauer. There's a time you can talk like that. There's a time you can't, in my opinion. And I think at certain points in time, I get what they're trying to open up. I get where they're trying to go. I do want to see athletes, actors, and people out there have honest conversations. But are you having honest conversations to the point that you're cutting off your nose despite your face? Yes, I'm looking at you, Mr. Brown, with the terrible mustache.
Yeah.
I just think that he you know what I mean? Like he's going a little bit too far, and like you earn criticism when it's during this season when you're with this storied franchise that you keep telling us about. And I see more effort in putting a rap album out. I see more effort in putting TV shows out. I see more efforts in making Space Jam 4. I see more efforts in all that other shit than just being a basketball player. And the amazing thing that LeBron James has been able to do for all of his life, and he still does it now, is he can play a shit-ass basketball game, and he can put numbers up that put a facade over what's really going on. I've watched him do it with the Cavs. I've watched him do it with the Lakers. He can walk away and still put up 24, 6, and 8, or 7 and 9, and it looks great if you just look at the box score. But when you watch it, it's not good. It's ugly, and he's not hustling, and he's not playing hard. He's not getting back. All signs of things that if his son was doing the same shit right now, he'd be embarrassed and he'd be telling his son that. But there's nobody that's willing to tell him that right now.
I can't top that. I can't disagree with it. I can just say that if we did some Congrat Lakers shirts, we might sell thousands of them. All right, Dre, I got 8 minutes left. Combine, NFL, Browns free agency questions that you got from your sunny perch in Arizona. Fire away.
What do you, and I kind of hit on this, but I got to ask you from the perspective of being around scouts and being around people that you know. When I see the kid, it's the Mississippi State defensive end that ran a 4.4.
Montez Sweat.
To the point, and we talked about Montez Sweat. Thank you for giving me the name. When I see him run, I see a different breed of athlete now preparing himself to play defensive end. And why? Because of what we talked about earlier. Look what they get when they get franchise tagged. Is he a legitimate guy that you can put his finger down on the ground on first and second down and play and be a 4-down, or can he be a 4-down player? Because he looks like a power forward to me, which you can put weight on and turn into a pass rusher. But I think you get my question. Can he legitimately be a guy that can change it? Or is he like a Michael Johnson, a guy like that, which is nothing wrong, or Carlos Dunlap, a guy like that?
I think he can. I think he was super productive. And probably, there's enough tape on him that you've seen him do it. It wasn't just one season where he came out of nowhere with 15 sacks or many plays where you weren't surprised by those outrageous numbers, right? But it's still, but he actually made the plays. The thing with him is he was kicked out of Michigan State and played at JUCO before he landed there. So what really went on? And I don't know that. I heard his answers at the thing, and I plan to dig in. Even though now I don't think he's going to get to 17 because 4.41 at 266 pounds. My God,
right?
Especially as we look at all these premium pass rushers not hitting the market. But yeah, to me, it's more of that. But you raised the question there, Dre, and that's why the bust rate with those guys is so high. And even some that are good players, it doesn't work. Dante Fowler had the injury, had all that. He's more of a situational player.
He is. Dante Fowler helped the Rams because of who he had inside when he couldn't get doubled. But he did Jacksonville. He's a bust, and that kind of plays into what we're saying though as well, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the Browns, I think they have some cachet because of the situation that they have. One of the greatest athletes in football already at one defensive end that's going to get double teamed. So you can be a little bit more creative. And speaking of that, I'm going to ask a lot about defensive players. Ed Oliver, the first comparison I saw. on Ed Oliver was they were trying to compare him to the guy from the Rams, and I kind of chuckled and was like, I don't want to go that far. But they do that because they're both that three technique guy that plays inside, and they're barely 6 foot.
Right. No, listen, the physical comparisons are legit. You're right. You hate to give anybody Aaron Donald, right? But a little bit with, not the ideal height, not the ideal arm length. But when you talk about freaky athleticism and quick twitch stuff that you don't see anywhere else, I think those comparisons are absolutely legit. I really do.
Okay. That's fair. I liked him as a player, but, being a Houston kid, and I hate that the one image we have of him, and we're not trying to do this to every player we bring up, the image of him is wearing the Parker on the sideline and the coach telling him to take it off. It was Major Applewhite, right? Yeah, he went after Major Applewhite, which crazy in its own right. I kind of continue with Brown's questions and defensive questions. Is Jamie Collins gone, in your opinion? I think he should be, but this contract he signed was not with this regime. I understood why they did it when they did it, but the signs seem from what I read that his time may be done. Is that true?
Yeah, I believe that he is. I think that, I think, Dre, when you look at a guy who was brought in by the previous regime, was only around half the time and is due to make this money, in most cases it's a no-brainer cut, even when you have the money, because you're sending the message to your locker room that we need guys that are all in here and the old regime is done, right? And they kind of did that anyway when you had 31 new guys last year. The reason this one is a little more complicated is because you don't have any bodies at linebacker, and you have Schobert coming up in a contract year and Kirksey in a year that realistically is the last one that he's going to be on this big contract, right? Assuming he gets healthy and gets back. So, there are complications to it, but I just think you go to Collins and you say, we are not interested in Jamie playing at this number. We're going to put the ball in your court. So if they are willing to take a great reduction and then you get, some sort of commitment and you come back and you load basically the second year of that contract and you get a driven Jamie Collins, then yes. But I think most times when that happens, the answer is, okay, well, if you don't want to pay him that, then we will go shop our services.
We'll go somewhere else. Right. The body Calhoun looks like he's done. I think that's
no. See, I think people are reading that wrong. See, not giving him.
Okay, good. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. He's restricted, and he might be done, but he's restricted, and he was undrafted. So that means if the Browns give him the tender, they're committing a $2 million 1-year contract to a guy, and if some team would give him a better offer, they wouldn't get any compensation for it. So by not tendering him, you make him a free agent, but you still have his rights, and you're not locked into that tender price or that tender length. If you want, maybe they don't want Body Calhoun, but if you want him, then you don't tender him because you say, let's do this for 2 years or this for 3 years. Let's not even go down that road because there's no negotiation coming back to us. And then it goes that way.
Amongst all the scouts, people you're to talk to, who's a player that I guess I got to talk about the quarterbacks because I can see him eye to eye. Kyler Murray is going all in. And I'm not against it. And I think the one thing, and this is my opinion, and I want to hear yours and just how people thought, and then I got another. Kyler Murray, to me, I don't know how after watching what we've watched in the NFL over the last 5 seasons, whether it be with the guy out in Seattle, whether it be with the guy in New Orleans, and whether it be the guy that we see in Cleveland. Obviously, height is played differently. There's so many teams play out as a shotgun. I know some of our favorite guys that put money on the line every week laughed when Kyler said he was going to play football. TA, I'm talking about you. But if he gets to line up 7 yards deep and he gets to use that unbelievable arm he has, and you're not allowed to hit quarterbacks like we saw quarterbacks get hit for the first 80 years of this league, I think you've got a legitimate chance. Now, remember, I'm in Arizona. I've been listening to a lot of Arizona sports talk. And the sports talk legitimately here is that they may be willing to take with the first pick, Kyler Murray, and try to trade Rosen. And somebody said they only think they can get a 3rd-round pick for him. And I'm like chuckling going, you can't draft somebody in the 1st round and trade him a year later and only get a 3rd-round pick. That's the talk here in Arizona where he played as a rookie. Where does this kid fall and what happens? Because he was the story of the weekend when it came down to his height.
Yeah, he's the story of the weekend because he's that gifted. I mean, this rise has been crazy, right? And, I don't necessarily agree with taking him that high or making him number 1 when you have Josh Rosen. But you only get so many chances at this, and when you're picking number 1, more times than not, if you're picking number 1 again, you ain't going to be around to do the picking, right? And we know these quarterbacks are so hard to come by. So if you really like Kyler Murray to the point that you are willing to build your offense and your off-season plan around him, then you might as well take him at number 1, Dre. You might as well. And so I have my – I guess I would sum it up by saying I have my hesitations. I have my reservations with this whole thing. But I think if you're in on Kyler Murray, you go turn the card in on Kyler Murray and go from there.
Hugh Jackson laughs at you. He got to see 2 number 1 picks because he was a great liar. The other thing out of this, and I think this is maybe Arizona. Look, they got a new regime already. They probably want Rosen, I think. But it's like if the Raiders or somebody want to move up to number 1, I'm just using them as an example because I think they're idiots. You absolutely do it, right? You talk it up like you'll take him number 1 so you can get somebody one of these teams to come up and get him. Even though I think Dwayne Haskins should go before Kyler Murray, I just think having that big-time arm and having the body that he has just going to last longer. But I said this during the season, and I'll continue saying this. We got to stop saying smaller guys are more receptive to getting injured. Everybody gets injured in the NFL. Let's just remember that when we have those conversations. There aren't many guys that don't get hurt. Last thing. Why were you in the back of the picture for The Athletic? Were you trying to hide? Where were you? We had to do some special navigation to find you in that big-ass picture. What was going on there?
Well, the truth is...
Did our followers...
I spent my whole childhood having to sit in row 1, right in the middle, right in front of the teacher's desk in every classroom I was in because I was the problem child. So now as an adult, when I'm in those meeting settings and I get the chance to kind of sit in the back or off to the side, I do, just as I kind of deal with the scars of my difficult childhood. And so what happened is there were chairs there and, that was actually the back of the room to where they took the picture based on where we were sitting during the actual meetings / presentations.
Gotcha.
And they sort of lined everybody up and they were like, come on, actually, this isn't going to work for you guys got to come walking up. And I was on my phone at the time because we'd just gotten out of like a 2.5-hour meeting. And so I just kind of moseyed right back into the middle. I mean, I am taller than most people. I'm not tall I'm tall to you. I'm not tall by normal human standards. So I just thought it was fine and safe in the back. And I didn't know it was going to catch fire like that on Twitter, but you were far from the only person who noticed that.
Hey, I'm the Kyler Murray of this podcast, okay? That means I got all.
You are. You're fat, you're short, you're fast, and no one knows exactly what to think of you going forward. Because you're so full of fucking shit all the time.
Yes, and yes. All right, last thing that I'll ask, and we could be done. I don't know why this happens. Maybe it's March. Maybe, I get out here to Arizona. I pay more attention to college basketball than I do when I'm home, probably because this week I've been without my kids and my family. So I've watched a lot of basketball. I got to tell you, I thought the Big Ten was but they make it 16. I don't think Ohio State's going to get in. I don't know why. They're going to have a hell of a run. But tell us, because we're getting into the fun part of March, give me a couple teams that we should also watch. I think Creighton was fun to watch this past weekend for me. The team they played had the unbelievable score. God, I can't remember who the
Marcus
guy that was
Howard
scoring
from Marquette.
Yes, Marquette. I know I got a friend that does a draft for the NCAA tournament. I know he'll be probably one of the top 2 or 3 picks. And I hate saying this, that's Simpson for Michigan, man. He cards the hell out of the ball. Just give us some tournaments that you'll be watching and paying attention to.
How about that hook shot
to
that kid? He's an Ohio kid.
Yeah. He's from Lima, right?
From Lima, yeah. He played for his dad. He started at Lima Central Catholic. Then his dad magically got the head coaching job at Lima Senior. Maybe because Xavier had two years left. Maybe he did. No, I know his dad. Shout out to you. Good guy. The Michigan is a special team, the way they play defense. They got that road win yesterday without arguably their best player in Charles Matthews, senior guy that's been around for a long time. I like Iowa State as a little bit of a sleeper. Experienced guys, really talented guys. Okay. They're a program that mostly relies on transfers. So some years they have the mojo and some years they don't. I really like their pieces. People are going to be down on Virginia because of last year, and their tournament history is not good. I think this Virginia team is more talented than the others, and they certainly are going to be focused this year. But I also think there's so much pressure on those games, and I think there does come a time when history matters if you get in a close game against a lesser team. So I like Iowa State as a sleeper, but I like Gonzaga to win it. I really do.
Yeah,
I think they have, especially if Zion's not coming back. Gonzaga they have so many scores. They have experience. They have size. People look at them. Trust me, this is the team that's well paid for, folks. They've got a lot. They've got poise. They've got experience, and they're going to be some bad MFers when March rolls around.
Yeah, they're fun to watch too. Houston is a team that's better than I thought they were. I got to catch a little bit of them. I don't know how far they'll go, but they're more talented than I thought. Let me put it that way. They got some talent.
They do. And you know what? Last year they had Michigan all but knocked out in the second round. They led that game by 6 or 7 points in the last 2 minutes. So
that's right.
You know, they don't play in one of the sexy conferences, but they are one, you know, kind of whistle away from being undefeated. They have a coach that's been there in Kelvin Sampson, and they got some big time dudes. Where do you seed them? How does it go? I don't know. One note on Marcus Howard, who you mentioned from Marquette. Buffalo is the real deal. They're a little bit banged up right now, so we'll see, you know, what they get. But their first loss early in the year, Marcus Howard scored 40 points in the second half on Buffalo.
That's in the second half.
In the second
Lord.
half.
Wow.
It was one of those performances like for the ages. But Buffalo's a team that certainly should win its first game and will have every right to win its second game as well when that starts here in a couple of weeks.
Can't wait. I'm actually excited for you, as you can hear. And it's funny, I'm all the way out here on the West Coast, and the only team we can talk about that actually matters is Gonzaga.
Yeah, the Pac-12 is going to be a one-bid league. It's not a good look.
Yeah.
Not a good look. But we can get into that later, and we will get more into college basketball. Shouts, as always, to Scene, to the Honeymoon Grill, to American Fireworks for helping to make this thing happen, for you guys for helping it grow. Facebook.com/A to Z Podcast, A to Z Podcast.com. We're at Dre Knott, at Akron Jackson on all your favorite social media sites. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.
See ya. Konnichiwa, Mill Street.